Sorry for reading the transcript. It's been so long since I prepared these slides. This first talk was delivered at Hong Kong for Web3 Scholars Conference. It is supposed to be a black background. So it's not that technical. When I received the invitation to speak, I'm surprised to find out this is a scholars conference amongst a series of industrial ones. The fact brought up in my mind the central question of my not so long career. What is the role of researchers in the blockchain world? More specifically, what is my role as a researcher? What does it even mean to be a researcher in the first place? Some researchers are seen as gods. They conjure the impossible and create a huge industry, like Satoshi. Some play gods. They believe their knowledge and identities give them divine power. In the pursuit of truth, they are free from constraints of law and morality. Others are oracles. They reveal the universe's pattern and remind humans of their limitations. But the blockchain world no longer needs gods and oracles. The developers and entrepreneurs do not need us to tell them what cannot be done, or at least I'm not good enough to be one. Although I find it difficult to create or reveal something magnificent, I find pleasure in destroying something that claims to be magnificent. This realization came after attacking a Bitcoin scaling protocol, Bitcoin Unlimited. I will tell you that story in a minute. Actually, I'm not. Because I've been telling this story so many times at COSIC before. My true talent is making other people unhappy. And being the cause of this unhappiness brings me great happiness. And I'm not alone. After reading today's agenda, I'm certain that I have come to the right place. Admit it, choosing to be a security researcher means that there must be something psychologically wrong with us. There is even a German word for it, Schadenfreude, which means making others unhappy, and being the cause of this unhappiness brings one great happiness. So I come as a gadfly. Socrates, during his defense, when on trial for his life, compared himself to a gadfly, who stings people and whips them into a fury, all in the service of truth. What am I doing here? I'm here to disseminate bias. These are my opinions. Sometimes they are rejected several times before being accepted for publication by some open-minded reviewers. Outside academia, these results are also loved by some but hated by others. Just like Zheng Yefu, a professor in my alma mater likes to say, a Ph.D. equips one to convince others of their biases. How boring a person will be without any biases. Here's the title of my talk. Let's begin. I will delve into my biases against 5 types of protocols. I know you are most curious about Ethereum, so I saved it for the last, so that in case we run a bit long and our hosts have to cut me off, they'll feel a little bit guilty. Because every time I give this talk, the slot was very short. Okay, the first one is against Bitcoin Unlimited. I will skip the technical content of the first 2 talks because these 2 are done during my PhD, and many of you have already heard of it. Bitcoin Unlimited was a Bitcoin scaling protocol that used to be the most influential one, that almost made it to 50%. But our study has revealed its vulnerabilities. So several months later, after our paper is reviewed, build support rate drops to 0. So here's the publication. I never made it to this conference because there was a giant snow in Belgium, and I traveled several days to the airport, but the plane cannot take off. And this is the beginning of my long story of never be able to go to the conference due to various reasons. Second, against 9 other proof-of-work protocols. So this paper was published in IEEE SMP. Basically, I attack all chain-based proof-of-work protocols that claims to be better than Nakamoto Consensus. The third one, against 7 sharded blockchains. The key message of this study is sharding is very difficult. You either end up with a centralized system, then why bother? Or a system with weaker security and poorer performance, then again, why bother? I'll have to go back to the beginning of the technical part and introduce Nakamoto Consensus, just in case some of you are not blockchain experts. So the challenges Nakamoto Consensus tries to solve is to have a permissionless consensus protocol, which is open, which means nodes can dynamically join and leave. Decentralized, there is no trusted party. And pseudonymous, there is no identity. A consensus protocol maintains a ledger that everyone agrees, append-only and ever-growing. So in Nakamoto Consensus, the ledger is organized as a chain of blocks. Each contains a set of transactions. To guarantee availability, each network participant keeps a copy of the entire ledger. How do I write on the ledger? The ledger extension process is called mining. In this process, miners, a special kind of participants, compete in solving a cryptographic puzzle generated from the latest block and a group of new transactions, which is the hash puzzle on the right. Whoever finds the solution broadcasts a new block. Then what if two blocks are broadcast simultaneously? We call this situation a fork. The core of NC is a backbone protocol, which guides us in resolving the forks. It prescribes that during a fork, miners choose the chain that is most computationally challenging to produce, which is usually the longest chain, or in a tie, the first received one. Another component in the backbone protocol is a difficulty adjustment mechanism, which periodically adjusts the target to stabilize the block interval. Again, if you're old enough, you should know that NC suffers from a security performance trade-off. To raise the performance, the naive way is to increase the block size or decrease the block interval. However, that will lead to more orphan blocks, more blocks that are not end up in the main chain. As Jonathan illustrated in this figure, more orphan blocks makes it easier for attackers to securely generate a longer chain, which downgrades the security and the performance. So there are various solutions to this problem. Sharding used to be a promising one, but I think nobody talks about that anymore now. So the key idea of sharding is that we distributing the tasks to different servers. The technique is successful in scaling databases. That is, we split all the servers into 128 groups, and each group is only responsible for a small set of transactions. However, it is difficult to apply that to permissionless blockchains. The first challenge is that there are the higher number of shards there are in the network, the higher proportion of cross-shard transactions. And each cross-shard transaction, sometimes it needs to be processed by a centralized chain. Sometimes it needs to be processed by multiple shards working together. It's dangerous anyway. And another challenge is shard reallocation. This is the main idea of shard reallocation, because in a permissionless network, nodes dynamically join and leave the network. So once you split the node into different shards, after a period of time, this number of nodes in shards will be uneven. Some shards will have a lot of nodes, some shards will have no nodes. So the sharding protocol needs to periodically shuffle these nodes into different shards so that it is even. Also, after a long enough period of time, the attacker may be able to corrupt some shard if it devotes all its computational power into corrupting certain shards. So shuffling also makes sure that the attacker cannot targeting a certain shard. So reallocation is indispensable because when no one moves, the attacker can gradually take over a shard. And network chain also leads to unbalanced network sizes, shard sizes. And there are some preconditions made by all these sharding protocols. We found this suspicious, but we are not going to challenge this. These preconditions include everyone knows when to do reallocation, which is a difficult problem by itself because in a permissionless network, there is no synchronized clock. And there is no CPU attack, which means every node which is allowed to join the network is a legitimate user. You cannot assume a permissionless network where 99% of nodes are controlled by the malicious player. Then there's no game here. And there's trustworthy global randomness, which means for every shard allocation, you need some kind of randomness to decide which node goes to which shard. And the attacker cannot bias this randomness generation algorithm. Under these preconditions, we find three properties desirable. The first is self-balance. The mathematical definition is quite complicated, but roughly speaking, it says shards are uniformly distributed despite churn. The second one is operability. It means some nodes don't need to shuffle. Because after a shuffling period, if all the nodes are shuffled, then nobody can carry the transaction history to the new shard members. Then the history is just broken. We care about the first two. And in this paper, we discovered that all existing designs choose an extreme between self-balance or operability. Either that the nodes are evenly distributed, either that the nodes are evenly distributed, or some nodes are preserved in the same shard. You cannot achieve the optimal values on both properties. And in this paper, we have a new design to parameterize between them. There's a trade-off. You have to choose between self-balance and operability. That is the main result of this paper. It's published in AFT. The fourth is against two DAG-based protocols. The same slide applies here. So DAG is another approach to scale blockchain and to address NC's security performance trade-off. So at the end of my PhD, we designed a protocol called NCMax, which can address this security performance trade-off via a chain-based design. The basic idea is to decouple transaction synchronization and confirmation, which allows parallel transaction processing, similar to DAG. A DAG is directed acyclic graph, which means simultaneously generated blocks can all be recognized as the authentic history of the blockchain, while preserving the chain-based structure. Because I don't like DAG protocols from the very beginning. I think it creates more problems than it solves. So I think, why bother using a DAG when you can solve the problem with a chain-based protocol? Here's the design. And after decoupling transaction confirmation and synchronization, we recouple the two steps in an updated block structure, which means each block spends part of its block space proposing new transactions for 2 or 3 blocks afterwards, and the rest of the rest of the block space confirming transactions that are previously proposed and synchronized, so that it can inherit NC's security properties and simplicity in reward distribution. I'm not going to go into detail with this work because this is not the center of this talk. But the point is, we submitted this paper several times before it is accepted, because reviewers believe that why use a chain-based protocol when DAG protocols solve the security performance trade-off already? So because so many reviewers raised the same question, we decided to write another paper explaining why DAG-based protocols don't solve the problem as they claim to be. So here's a brief introduction to DAG-based protocols. Early DAG-based protocols simply, like Spectre or Phantom or Conflux, they simply allow simultaneous blocks and all can contribute to transaction confirmation with some smart algorithm to decide a global order among these blocks. The problem with this approach is that it has weak security guarantees. It can only tolerate attackers up to like 1/15 of the entire network's computational power. If the attacker controls like 1/10 of the computational power, the attacker can reorder transaction any way he wants. And it only provides partial security analysis. For example, it only can claim a much weaker aliveness or persistence guarantee that you cannot swap the order of 2 transactions if they are like 2 minutes apart, something like this. So later, these two are provable secure DAG-based protocols, PRISM and OHI. The key idea is that they decouple transaction synchronization and confirmation. I feel like they copy from NCMax, but yeah, the main idea is similar. And how do they do that? So they confirm transactions with a series of NC chains of smaller blocks. And because they use NC chains to confirm transactions, they can borrow NC's security proofs, which are already well established. There are a lot of techniques to prove the security of Nakamoto Consensus, so that they can reuse the results of these proofs. So they can prove that it is much more difficult to reverse the order of transaction or stop the liveness of the chains. But can we really get away with the security performance trade-off by using these tricks? Both of these works use a hidden assumption of decoupling, which is they assume that all small blocks, if the block is small enough, let's say it's less than 1 megabyte, they can enjoy a short and constant delay, and they are always accepted by all miners immediately after they receive these small blocks. At first glance, this is not a problem, because if the block is short enough, it is supposed to be propagated to the network within 100 milliseconds. However, it does not always hold when you have huge blocks among them. For example, in OHE, it assumes that as long as all the blocks are small enough, it can be accepted immediately. But there are two phenomena this don't hold. The first one is block jam. No matter how small the block is, if tons of blocks are mined within a short period of time, some of them will be delayed. For example, in this figure, if the network can process 1 block per second, and you have 3 blocks mined in 2 seconds, then one of these blocks cannot be immediately accepted by all the miners. There's an upper bound by the node's bandwidth. The second phenomenon is called late predecessor, which means assuming that the red block is a small block. It points to 3 huge blocks. These huge blocks, think of them as 10 megabytes per block. And the red block is received by the network immediately. But the miners, at this time, it cannot start mining on the red blocks, because some of these black blocks are not accepted, are not received by some miners yet. So most of the miners will have to wait until these huge predecessors to be received by the network before they can start mining on the smaller block. This is what we call late predecessor. But their proof used the hidden assumption of decoupling without considering these two phenomena. So we did some clever mathematical analysis, and the result is they also suffer from the security performance trade-off. The details can be found in this paper. However, it is not easy to get it published either, because according to the reviewers, so why they ask us why analyzing a DAG-based protocol when chain-based protocols already solve the security performance trade-off. Apparently, maybe it's the same set of reviewers, but they were not persuaded before the NCMax paper was published, but they were persuaded afterward. So if only I could reverse the order of these two papers, both of them will be easy to accept it. Yeah, anyway. So I've got a feeling that you tell me you were persuaded 2 years ago. So why bother? So once again, I was in an awkward position. I hope the protocols I attack get more popular so that people believe it is worth attacking. Luckily, it was accepted at NDSS 2024. The same conference that accepted NCMax. The last part of the first talk is against all proof-of-stake protocols. But this talk is too short to be wasted on attacking proof-of-stake protocols. You can see my 2019 talk, where I spent an hour discussing why proof-of-stake can never achieve the same level of security as proof-of-work, and how many attacks were yet to be formally analyzed. However, due to various reasons, I'm not the one to claim the attack papers. Because a lot of other researchers start attacking proof-of-stake protocols. I know many of them haven't watched my talk, but I feel like I lay out a blue map for them to work on attacking proof-of-stake protocols. They were implementing my plans. Earlier, 2023, our research team at Cryptape did a project of 15 lectures surveying all 585 blockchain papers published in top CS conference between 2020 and 2022. Here's a very rough comparison between proof-of-work and proof-of-stake protocols. There are 41 papers focused on proof-of-work, and 10 of them are formal analysis, and there are 13 new designs, and 18 analyzing mining attack and ecosystems. And there are 23 papers involving proof-of-stake. 11 are analysis, security analysis, and 12 are new designs. Basically, if you compare these papers, you discover that the formal analysis of NC says that proof-of-work is more secure than previously believed. But proof-of-stake is, we discover more attack vectors, basically instantiating my 2019 talk. And for new proof-of-stake designs, we were not sure we can ever achieve proof-of-work security. But now we are sure they can never achieve proof-of-work security, because there are a series of papers describing that certain properties are impossible for proof-of-stake protocols. And there is no paper analyzing proof-of-stake ecosystem, because there is no ecosystem. All proof-of-stake systems are basically centralized, so there's not much to analyze. A special case worth mentioning is Ethereum proof-of-stake, because it is so much fun. In Ethereum, a valid block to some may be invalid to others, which means there is no block validity consensus. Apparently, Vitalik haven't read my Bitcoin Unlimited paper. And Ethereum uses a synchronous model when issuing rewards and uses a partially synchronous model when confirming blocks. Apparently, Vitalik haven't read my SMP paper either. Thus, it could reward the bad and punishing the good. Again, he should read my papers. And all this are not just my words. These are verified by researchers after me. A lot of researchers already jumped on it like a pack of wolves. Ethereum claims to own the future, but those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. What's next? With so many researchers attacking Ethereum, it is difficult to find a new angle, let alone a new message. Yet I managed to find one. Actually, I managed to find several, but I write slowly. So I end this talk with my best wish to Ethereum. Please don't die until I'm done with you. So this is the first talk. The second talk is another one of the angles I found to attack Ethereum. And this one is, I was supposed to present this talk August 4th at the Science of Blockchain Conference 2025 at Berkeley, which is a selected papers, like the best blockchain papers published in the last year. But this paper was not published for various reasons. Again, this extends my long list of papers I wasn't able to present by myself. And the 2 NDSS papers, I wasn't there. So, good afternoon, everyone. The title of this paper is A Place for Everyone versus Everyone in Its Place, Measuring and Attacking the Ethereum Global Network. Because this paper is technically straightforward, I'd like to share more of my thoughts on the problem and the submission process at the end of this talk. A brief disclaimer, the first author is solely responsible for the correspondence with the Ethereum developers and the technical results. I, on the other hand, am innocent, kind, and polite. We begin with a quick introduction to peer-to-peer node discovery. In a decentralized network, nodes must find and connect to each other before block and transaction synchronization. This process is known as node discovery. This simple node discovery model is applicable to all peer-to-peer networks. In the network, each node holds a routing table that stores the routing information of other nodes, including IP addresses, TCP ports, UDP ports, and so on. When a new node enters, its routing table is empty, so it's a blank table. So it first reaches out to some boot nodes, whose routing information is hard-coded in the source code. The new node asks the boot nodes for the routing information of other nodes. We call this request message find node. Now that the routing table is no longer empty, the node contacts more nodes repeatedly and asks them for more routing information, and they reply. This process continues iteratively. Meanwhile, to run the service, the node executes a handshake protocol and attempts to establish an application layer TCP connection with some nodes. Upon success, they join the network and start exchanging transactions, blocks, and other messages related to the service. This process also repeats itself until the node has its targeted number of outgoing connections. In Ethereum, this target is 16. In like BSN, this number is like 64 or something, 66, I think. Why is efficient node discovery so important? Its impact ripples across various aspects of a blockchain network. Improved node discovery efficiency leads to an increase in connections and a decrease in bandwidth waste. More connections contribute to better eclipse and Sybil attack resistance and can reduce transaction and block propagation latency. Concurrently, minimizing bandwidth waste contributes to lower block propagation latency, lower operational cost, or higher throughput. These improvements enhance privacy and improves MEV and consensus attack resistance because they reduce an attacker's window and opportunity to detect and manipulate network latencies for their own gain. Ultimately, these advantages boost the network's scalability and decentralization. The focus of this study is the Ethereum Global Network, EGN for short, which we characterize as a hodgepodge. We use this term because it significantly deviates from traditional peer-to-peer network designs. A typical peer-to-peer network hosts a single service. The Bitcoin network hosts Bitcoin, and the BitTorrent network hosts BitTorrent. One office for one company, plain and simple. The Ethereum peer-to-peer network, or EGN, hosts more than 7,000 services. These 7,000 companies operate in one massive office, and each new employee is randomly assigned a desk. Before diving into its technical implications, let's first answer a question that has puzzled me for years. How? Although it's impossible to reconstruct the exact thought process, we can examine some key design choices that has led to this scenario. First, Ethereum's node discovery protocol DiskV4 employs 3 elements rather than 2 to identify a service chain. This would be unnecessary if the network were designed solely for Ethereum's mainnet and testnet. This implies that the developer envisioned a multi-service network from the outset. Second, it is a common practice for new blockchain projects to fork the source code of Geth due to its convenience. Third, early projects joined the Ethereum Global Network, which established this practice as a default for latecomers. To sum up, the blending of services was a deliberate design choice made by Ethereum's creators and carried forward in subsequent projects. When I asked Google Gemini's opinion about this situation, it wrote the following paragraph. This unique architecture allows for incredible innovation and flexibility. New services can be launched and scaled rapidly without the need for building separate infrastructure. It's a testament to the power of decentralized technologies, where the boundaries between different services blur and the possibilities are truly limitless. Is that true? Researchers have observed this phenomenon since 2018, generally with a negative conclusion. However, a recent study viewed this setting as a secure but inefficient. I suspect this was not the author's genuine opinion, and I will discuss why at the end of this presentation. There are some good words from the industry, though. By joining the Ethereum network, new projects can maximize code reuse, thereby saving development costs. Additionally, if they choose not to maintain their own boot nodes, they can reduce deployment costs. They may also enjoy higher node discovery efficiency as their node's routing information has more copies in the network, making them easier to find. the blended network has better attack resistance since a larger pool dilutes the attacker's influence. Finally, by joining the same network, they facilitate interoperability. 3 of these 5 benefits do not warrant further technical investigation. Reusing the source code has no direct external impact. Piggybacking on boot nodes has marginal security benefits, but a huge security cost. Has marginal economic benefits, but a huge security cost. And there's currently no plan for interoperability at the network level. So in this paper, we quantitatively evaluate the remaining 2 potential advantages. Our technical investigation comprises of 3 key components. First, we measure the network scale, node uptime, service distribution, and service distribution within the node's DHTs. Second, we assess the node discovery efficiency by tallying the number of fine node messages and handshake requests required for each successful connection, both in the EGN and in a dedicated network's environment. Third, we evaluate the impact of the weakest attack in both the EGN and the dedicated network setting. This section focuses on the empirical data we collected. EGN utilizes 2 main node discovery protocols, DiskV4 and DiskV5. DiskV4 operates since its inception. We discovered that it consumes significant bandwidth, around 20% for Ethereum and even more for other services. A critical characteristic of DiskV4 is its lack of prioritization of same service peers in its routing table or during handshake requests. In contrast, DiskV5, deployed in late 2023, were designed with service advertisement in mind. We measured both networks in December 2024. DiskV4 averaged around 100,000 nodes, where DiskV5 is roughly twice its size. At any given time, approximately 8,000 nodes were shared between both protocols. We observed a substantially higher proportion of always online nodes in DiskV4 compared to DiskV5 compared to DiskV4. In DiskV4, always online nodes roughly a third, which is 32,000. But in DiskV5, it's roughly 2/3, like 162,000. Our first non-trivial discovery is that 2/3 of DiskV5 nodes in any given snapshot remain online throughout our measured period. We will see that their constant presence degrades the discovery efficiency for everyone. This tree map, as of December 17, 2024, illustrates the service distribution within DiskV4. It reveals hundreds of Ethereum nodes are still operating on older forks, having not yet upgraded their clients. Also notably, the identity of 102125, the 5th largest service, remains unknown. 65 of nodes provide no service information. They rejected our connection mainly due to no available connection slot, which is normal. And Ethereum mainnet is the only remaining service among the top 10 in 2018, with a declining dominance from 54% to 31%. Moving to DiskV5, the situation is even more opaque. DiskV5 provides no explicit service information. Our analysis shows that a staggering 91% of nodes also lack client information. To investigate this further, we examined the source code of all 5 Ethereum execution clients, 6 Ethereum Consensus clients, and 3 popular DiskV5 clients. Our key observation as of January 2025 is that no DiskV5 client has implemented any mechanism to prioritize same service node discovery and connection, which means the intended benefits of DiskV5 are not being realized in practice. They mistake planning for progress. We measured the service distribution in the nodes routing tables, known as DHTs, and the results are concerning. Nodes have less than 20% of their peers of the same service in their DHTs. The rank number, like 1, 2, 6, 7, 10, 43, represents the service ranking according to the number of nodes. The percentages in the boot nodes are slightly higher, but this is not because these boot nodes gave priority to nodes of their respective services, but because all the newly joined nodes will contact the boot nodes first, which means these percentages are easily manipulated. Our third observation is that the majority of disk v4 public nodes have less than 5% of same service peers in their DHTs. The DHT is a node's potential contact list. Without friends of the same kind, a node cannot expect them to send it blocks and transactions when needed. Let's examine the efficiency of node discovery in EGN. To assess EGN's node discovery efficiency, we deployed 5 nodes of varying service popularity and measured the number of find node messages and handshake requests for each successful outgoing connection. As can be seen, on average, a node must initiate 3,000 or even tens of thousands of handshake requests for each successful connection. This number directly corresponds to latency and bandwidth consumption. In comparison, if each service were to operate in its dedicated peer-to-peer network, the bandwidth, latency, and number of messages could be reduced by at least 76%, with the reduction varying according to different services. If you compare this number with that of Bitcoin, a stark contrast emerges. In Bitcoin, every successful connection requires only 4 handshakes. Our fifth observation is that in EGN, over 3/4 of handshake requests are directed towards nodes of other incorrect services. You can hardly expect a successful handshake if neither your direct contacts nor their contacts are of your kind. Disk V5, despite its newer design, exhibits even poorer performance. Over a 12-hour period in January 2025, we recorded millions of find node messages and hundreds of thousands of handshake requests, but our Disk V5 nodes established at most 3 incoming connections and 0 outgoing connections. This is our fourth observation. The 2/3 consistently online nodes occupy 81% of the node's DHTs, degrading the node's discovery efficiency for other services. They are always online. They are in every node's routing table, but they do not respond to any handshake or find node requests. They are black holes in the contact list. We suspect that they are Ethereum Consensus clients with connection slots full. Now let's turn to security. We launched a DHT pollution attack using the weakest possible attacker in a simulated environment that replicates EGN. Our attacker model is minimum, fewer than 0.3% of the network scale, exploiting no protocol or implementation flaws, and merely sending ping messages to honest nodes and request to find node request with attacker node's information. This weak attacker serves as a foundation for more sophisticated exploits. It will not be able to cause any actual damage in any ordinary peer-to-peer network. Our attacker can replace inactive nodes from the node's DHTs, but cannot replace a long-term active peers. So, a node is eclipsed in our definition if the victim has no honest peer, same or different service in its DHT, regardless of any active application layer connections. Therefore, as long as there is at least one honest and active peer in the DHT, the node is safe. To validate our simulation environment, we simulate a smaller network environment with 600 honest nodes and 300 attacker nodes, running for 24 hours without network churn. We then compared our simulation results against a Kubernetes system running actual clients with similar parameters. Both systems showed comparable outcomes, confirming that our simulated environment accurately reflects the network's dynamics. Here are the results from our full-scale simulation. The left figure shows that as the number of attacker nodes increases, the percentage of same service peers in nodes DHTs drops to 0 for all services except Ethereum mainnet. In contrast, the right figure reveals that in dedicated peer-to-peer networks, this percentage holds above 20% for all services, even under the same attack. The left figure illustrates that as the number of attacker nodes rises, the handshake success rate plummets to 0 for 4 of the services, with Ethereum mainnet and Polygon being the exceptions. The right figure demonstrates that the resilience of dedicated peer-to-peer networks. Under the same attack, the handshake success rate remains above 30% for all services except KCC. KCC's rates holds at 10% due to its exceptional small network size. With only 300 attacker nodes, we were able to isolate approximately 10,000 nodes from the rest of the network, significantly hindering recovery. The same attack would only isolate hundreds of nodes in the dedicated network setting. This is our sixth observation. The scarcity of same-service peers in EGN nodes DHTs severely compromise its robustness against DHT pollution attacks. Let's draw some lessons, both on the problem and writing the paper. Here are our key findings. Half of the public nodes in EGN maintain routing tables with less than 5% of same-service peers. Over 3/4 of handshake requests are directed to nodes of incorrect service. Disk V5, despite its design, does not implement its intended service prioritization, with 2/3 of online nodes occupying over 4/5 of routing table entries, but failing to respond efficiently. While finding a single neighbor costs just 4 handshakes in Bitcoin in EGN, this ranges dramatically from 3,000 in Polygon to an extreme of 45,000 in KCC. Finally, the blended nature also leaves the network more vulnerable to Eclipse attacks. These results collectively demonstrate that the blended architecture, without proper service prioritization, leads to substantial inefficiencies and vulnerabilities. Let's revisit the commonly touted benefits of EGN's architecture. In reality, a larger network guarantees improved data availability if the data itself, in this case, nodes routing information, becomes more accessible. Similarly, a larger network only dilutes attackers' resources if it maintains robust internal connectivity. Our findings show that when network size outpaces the ability of nodes to locate reliable and honest neighbors, it becomes a vulnerability rather than a strength. If your castle is made of sand, no matter how big it is, it can be washed away. The current state of EGN is largely driven by the allure of convenience. Blockchain projects are often incentivized to fork existing code bases, join existing networks, and piggyback on boot nodes to save on the development and deployment cost. While these choices offer immediate convenience, they often come at a significant cost to true security and decentralization. As part of the review process, we revised our paper's title. Our previous title, United We Fail, Divided We Stand, while provocative, was perceived as adversarial and criticized for challenging the values of decentralization and democracy. These implications were unintended. My original intent with United We Fail was to evoke the crab bucket mentality. Our new title, A Place for Everyone versus Everyone in its Place, is more neutral and accurate, but longer. In the parallel work, the recently developed DiskNG protocol is highly relevant to EGN's node discovery, offer a novel approach to the problem. But it's because the authors are not here, so I would say it's a complicated solution to a simple problem, so I don't see why they do it. The slides addressing the remaining comments and feedback from SBC reviewers and other discussions. We've tackled several points, including fixing broken reference links and addressing the need for a stronger conclusion. Other comments such as detecting manually set connections, identifying validators and exchanges, and whether we've posted on the forum are still under consideration or in progress. We did contact the Ethereum developers though. According to them, it's a known issue, so we don't need to do anything about it. That's it.